Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another story of facilitating software architecture and design. With me today is Gien Verschatse, and she will tell us a story. And with me are my co-conspirator, Andrea McNorsky, and we have Evelyn van Kelle here as well. Hello. And
No.
I'm very curious what story you have to share.
Okay. So my story is about something that happened very early in my career. I think I had been working for 2, 3 years at that point in time. So I got a job and I started out on a Phoenix sort of project. Like we're going to do it better and we're going to start over. And so I was part of that team for like 6 months. But then the company decided to kill it. They said that it's taking too long, it's not going to be sellable as a product. So we're going to kill it and you're going to work on the old product. But the old product had not been, modernized very well. It had very old technologies. It still had 3B, things like that. And even back then, that was already pretty outdated. And so it wasn't an emotionally sort of fun change at that point as well. But at the same, time, you have to make the best of it because, well, you have to roll with what you were given. And so we had a team lead and we had a manager. The manager used to work in the team and sort of got promoted from senior developer to manager. Team lead had also worked there for a long time. We had a very outdated project and we had no architects. And just to make this clear, everyone was a software developer, and most of what we knew was from developing software. And it was almost a monolith. We had a few services, but not that much. But we were very much domain driven design, sort of enthusiastic about it. So I thought I'm going to organize an event storming session to sort of see where we're at, together with sort of mapping all the technical debt that was actually there. I did that from an emotional point of view, is of going to the team and asking, okay, what is the most frustrating? What is the most bothersome that we have right now? What annoys you, what makes it difficult to do your job? Things like, well, I don't know any VB and I have to actually program in it. So that's quite difficult. The event serving was an absolute disaster. It was my first. I think I also mentioned that one in the book at some point, because I could not get people away from how it was. So I wanted to see how we could do it better, but I couldn't get people to step away from how it worked right now. Okay? So that did not go well. And the wall of emotional technical debt, in a sense, if I should call it that. We also wanted to tackle that, but there it was one person who also had a very sort of dominant character, and our team lead, it was the exact opposite. And our manager also, he was a bit more dominant, also did not really have the necessary skills that are required in management. Because you see that often when software developers get promoted to management positions, because they're very good at their job, which is software development, but it takes a whole different kind of skill set, which they don't have, and which people also don't think you need to learn, because, well, you're supposed to be able to do all of that, communicating and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you're just supposed to be able to do that. So the meetings were always very tense already when we were trying to modernize. And this one person who was very dominant sort of got their way. So we're going to implement an event source system. But the thing was that it was implemented completely next to everything that was already there. And so that emotional wall that we have created was not being tackled at all because of that. And no matter what I tried or how we tried to change that, basically we would only get relief like 2, 3 years later when we could kill certain parts of the old system and start using the new system. And we also had a QA team, and the software was kept on site due to very sensitive information inside that domain. And so the IT who had to deploy just got error messages, and it was so difficult all the time, and they didn't know how to actually do that because you had queues now, and you had all that stuff which you didn't have before. And, QA also didn't know how to test it decently and how to do that. And eventually what you saw is that, people got fed up and started leaving the company because, management was not that great either. But even within the team, there was no end to it. This is not going to end. We'll never see anything better. The job won't be easier. And a lot of people, left because it just wasn't fun anymore to be a software developer on that team. I left too after a gigantic burnout. And I tried and I felt like I failed, that I could not work in that situation, and that I swapped jobs. But now all those years later, being less emotional, it was pretty toxic to work in. And the architectural decision that we made was just really bad. And we didn't think about it at all. It just the person who was the loudest in the meeting got their way. And there was no plan. There was no sitting down and thinking this through. It was just this is the latest and greatest, and we're going to do that. And, screw everybody else, screw all the other teams. Thinking about what actually will this be like for IT and QA. Nobody gave this any thought. Me neither, because I was, very new at the job, and I didn't really know how to think about architecture and design, and how to make decisions like that, because, there was nobody there that knew how to do that either. So that is pretty much my story. I don't think the company still exists at this point. I know at some point there was like one person still maintaining the product because it was still used by certain customers. But the company, because it didn't really get any better, the company invested in another similar product that they acquired, basically.
Sounds very, very, yeah, this sounds very like, you left and burnout, and it feels like a very sad ending to a story. And that's what it was still. It wasn't just you. It was like all these other people as well. So I guess you're sharing this because you're trying to say, hey, this doesn't need to be the way. If you could come back to, if you could time travel and deliver like t-shirt size slogan to pass him, what would the t-shirt say?
Leave now. But depending on how much I go back in time, obviously. Because now, all those years, it's 15 years later or something like that. I don't know why I stayed. Like, you try to make the best of something, but I didn't have the skills to go against people who had a very dominant sort of quality to them. And I don't know why I tried so hard to make this work. At the moment, they killed the Phoenix project, which is why I took the job in the first place. I wouldn't say don't try. It's just that quit sooner. It's okay to quit bad environments, bad situations, and try to find a job where you think, it's more about collaboration instead of the loudest voice in the room, where you have a manager, that actually listens to the teams and things like that. It's not a bad thing to do. I felt like a failure then. Right now, I should have left sooner. I should have my message.
Is that a red flag in a way? A very dominant authoritarian. Nowadays they call it CV driven development, right? I think Git made this whole survey why people choose technology, and it's like, to pimp my resume. Resume is the English word, I think. But would that now be a red flag for you if you're in the same situation where you're like, well, there's nothing to do here? And my manager once said, if you pull a dead horse to water, it still stays a dead horse. So
that's
really
actually a good word. The dominant character is not a red flag per se, because I have friends that are quite dominant. I have people I've worked with in the past who also are quite dominant. They take up a lot of space in collaborations and conversations. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's that if everyone, if the environment and the culture allows that to become something toxic, then you have a problem. And also because this person did have quite good technical skills, and it was based on how good are you technically, whether or not you had something to add. I would say that would be the red flag, not the dominant things in the not things, but not the dominant people in the room. But how does the company, how does the team, how do you deal with it? Because you can deal with it in a healthy way, and you can deal with it in an unhealthy way. And if you feel like this is unhealthy, which I very much felt because I had a burnout in that situation, then you should, that's a red flag, and you should leave.
So if that situation would occur now, like with all the experience and the years that you have now, like you would enter that same situation, but as the person you are now, what would you do differently with like leave early? Yeah, okay, sure, but like with that specific person, well, how would you approach that in now?
I think, first of all, I would be like, okay, this is one option that we have. There are other things that we can do. I would put their proposal next to all the other things that you can do architectural wise to improve the legacy system. I would also dig a hell of a lot deeper in the consequence, because it's only when you started doing that you realized, oh, actually, what is really bothering people, what makes the job unpleasant, like, is not being tackled at all because of this. And I would, notice that sooner with the experience that I had. And I would also bring that up as something not positive, negative about going for that implementation and say, okay, if we still want to use all these technologies, what is a different way that we can actually approach that, which actually also relieves some of these frustrations that the developers have? Or we don't put all our eggs in the same basket and we tackle some of these, unpleasantness right along next to it. You don't have to dedicate 100% to just, event source system.
There's something else I found with people. I work with a few people that remind me of this person. Yeah,
All do. I think.
I think we all have, and sometimes this behavior comes from a lot of insecurity, and sometimes kind of talking about it in a more not like saying, "Hey," like a clippy. It sounds like you're insecure. That doesn't work. But but if you kind of try to address what, like, start prodding at the underlying cause, like sometimes I felt like I have good outcomes. I'm not saying that that's the only way, but if you're in a position where, like, okay, I want to try something, sometimes kind of put a coaching hat on and dealing with the I hear you're worried about us not being able to complete this, or I hear that you're trying to pay your mortgage. Either of those, in a, especially the mortgage one, a slightly more subtle ways, can help, but it depends a lot on the person, especially when there's no strong management. I feel that, yeah, it's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, and I mean, now when I go to companies, I'm a consultant most of the time, so I enter in a different sort of position, and that also made me realize that, well, it was between colleagues. We were all colleagues, and so as I said, no one knew how to make architectural decisions. We did not have that knowledge. No one really had that role, but also nobody was facilitating this. I was facilitating some of it, but still I had a lot of skin in the game, so we had opinions. And we go back to facilitators do need to stay neutral once in a while. Well, not once in a while, but most of the time. And as a consultant, I sometimes have to sort of still give advice. So I can't stay 100% neutral there, but I don't eliminate any of the other people's ideas or how it is there either. So I feel like having someone like that would have been very beneficial, because I was just a colleague with other colleagues who were trying to make the best of a not so pleasant legacy system, basically.
Yeah, I had that experience before. I was facilitating. And so the Scrum Master role and an engineer didn't quite work well because, I had my opinion and you're getting into all situations. Now, writing the book with you, I learned many things, but I have two questions.
Yeah.
Did this story trigger your healthy obsession with decision making? So that's question number one. And question number two is I learned and started using a lot of the pro-con fix list that you talk about, and also theory about decision making, where you talk about, well, a decision has information as input, it has options as input, but also preference. And what I hear from your story, and that would be my question, is that this person, I assume it's a he, had preferences. So how nowadays would you make that visible, right? Usually you already mentioned if you just do, and I've done this before, do the pro-con fix list with the group, that already helps tremendously, right? Because then you go factual into the options and that will already set the stage. But sometimes there's still this preference underneath that that can dominate the group. So how would you, so that's just question number two. So question number one, does this trigger your healthy obsession with decision making? And question number two, how do you deal with the preferences nowadays to make that visible?
I wish I could say yes, but there wasn't one thing that triggered my healthy obsession with decision making. It was the worst. Like that was the worst I did ever have. It was burnout and leaving. But I kept hitting very similar things. Like Andrea immediately said, like, oh, this does not sound unfamiliar. I think Evelyn also said that this does not sound unfamiliar. And there has to be a better way to do all of that, is because at regular intervals, you go into meetings and you hit these dominant people in the room, and who yells the loudest, he sort of gets their way. And, that's repetitiveness of that is what gave me a healthy obsession with it, basically. So that's answering question number one. And I already forgot question number two, Kenny.
Yeah, I hear this person had a preference for event sourcing.
Yeah.
I also have preferences, right? And especially with someone who's being dominated, how would you make that explicit, that preference of a decision?
Yes. So I would dig more into why this strong reaction towards this. Back in the day, it was quite a while, right? It was the beginning of my career. So event sourcing was quite new back then. And like right now, I can understand that we got kicked off a Phoenix project, which was using quite the latest trends and technologies, into something. So, which didn't have that much new. And if, your skills are very easily obsolete in this market as a software developer. And so I think it also came somewhere from that, from being scared that if I ever try to find a new job and I have to work years in this very old system, I won't be able to find the new job. So I would dig more into why this strong reaction. Go a bit to trying to find the value-based heuristics behind this very strong preference. Like I find it more important that my skills stay up to date than actually tackling the emotional hardships that the team has, is sort of a value-based thing that's behind it. And so I would look more at that as well to make it explicit, because very often people don't always, not many people sit down and think, okay, what are my morals? What are my ethics? Which values do I have in life? Which heuristics do actually, drive that? I think all four of us in this room have done that. And we do understand more where these emotional and these preferences actually start coming from. Or if we don't understand, we have the tendency to figure that out for ourselves. But most people don't have that. Most people don't really analyze their emotions. They definitely don't understand the values or ethics or morals that are pushing them. And so I think that formulating those value-based heuristics and making them understand that, okay, it's like, this is how you see the world and this is where it is coming from. And then you're able to say, but do you understand that this person has a completely different heuristics because different values are pushing it? It makes it easier to have conversations. And you're not talking that big about emotions, which also doesn't scare people, but you're talking about value-based heuristics and preferences, which is basically we're talking about your emotions, but in a way that people don't quite get. You're talking about their emotions. So yeah, I think
Nice.
that's yeah. So after 20 years in the software industry, which is male dominated, I have found a way to talk about emotions that isn't really talking about emotions.
Cool.
Is that the cheerful note to finish this?
I think that's a great ending of it.
No, but I think it shows the importance of, hopefully we can change that we do. So thanks. This was another story. Thanks for sharing your story, Gien. And to the rest of you, please, and here's my like, subscribe to our podcast, YouTube, or anyway, give us feedback. We also have a Discord channel where you can join us, where you can start talking about these stories, but also more on domain-driven design or software design and architecture. So hope to see you there. Give us some feedback. And thanks again for listening, watching, reading in. And until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you.